What Julian had to do to secure his freedom was plead guilty to journalism, to investigative journalism, and he was convicted and was given a sentence, and the sentence was time served, but it's still 5 years in prison for publishing truthful information. Free speech is not something that is given to us by a government. It's something that we all have.
Right.
That we are all born with as human beings.
Yes.
We can say what we want, we can think what we want. It is part of our humanity, and when we start to say, well, you can't say this or you can't say that, you're actually depriving each other of our humanity.
If you have a protocol where you can essentially say what you want and you can't be deplatformed or silenced, and you own your identity there and no one else can switch off your account because you own the account, that is one massive power. Hello and welcome to another episode of You're the Voice. I'm Flat here in Sydney, Australia at Bitcoin Live. And I have the great pleasure of sitting here with Gabriel Shipton. Hey, Gabriel.
Hey.
Thanks for hanging out with me.
No, it's good to be with you.
We met in El Salvador a month ago or so, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
it's like the other side of the world, and now we're here. And it's like, yeah, we sat together at dinner, and I'm like, can we talk in Sydney? And you said yes. Yeah. So I'm just really grateful for the fact that we can fly around and be in all these places and conferences and meet like amazing people.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? There's Bitcoiners everywhere, I think.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know Gabriel, Gabriel is an Australian movie maker and a half brother of Julian Assange, which is the WikiLeaks founder. I'm sure you know Julian and Gabriel and your father, right? You often advocate for Julian's release, and which is now successful, which is so amazing. You know, I think many of us were not sure whether that's going to happen. So that's amazing. I've met Stella in Amsterdam about a year and a half ago at Bitcoin Amsterdam, and we didn't have a chance to do an interview together yet. But right after we met, she signed me up on the Westminster Declaration, because I'm a journalist as well, independent journalist. And I spoke out when October 7th happened and spoke about the fact that it must have been a false flag because there were too many things that didn't add up. And I was heavily silenced by, you know, people, mostly people in Israel, but also Jewish people around the world, and called names and, you know, the whole classic treatment that you give someone who steps out of line. Yeah. And so I guess she saw that and she was like, I want to sign you up on that declaration as well, which for those of you who don't know, it's on my blog. There was a declaration by, I don't remember how many, but many, more than 100, I think, independent journalists and scientists and doctors and many different people who were silenced in the last few years. And that declaration was supposed to be like a free speech declaration. We stand for free speech no matter what. And it's a whole long article, which is, I mean, it was so nice and so important that they did that. And I was honored to be there, one of those people that signed this declaration, because obviously I did not go through anything like what Julian went through, but, you know, I've decided to put my convenient life on the line when I decided to speak out, when it started with COVID and then later on expanded to other topics. But I'm a dissident voice to the government. And especially in Israel with a war right now, it's not easy, you know? And you got to be very careful with what you do, because you could end up in jail if you say the wrong thing or do something that they don't like. Mm-hmm. So I was following closely what Stella is doing, what you guys were doing, and what Julian is doing, because I think we are in jeopardy right now with freedom of speech, and for journalists specifically around the world, where Julian's case is so important. He has been released, which is amazing, but he hasn't been pardoned. And so they still have him as guilty for the crimes that...
Of telling the truth.
Of telling the truth and doing his journalistic work. So let's start with that. How do you see the result of what has happened. Obviously, we're all super excited that he's back, but how do you and him and the family see the result?
Well, it was Julian was in jail for a very long time, 5 years in a maximum security prison, and then 7 years before that in the Ecuadorian embassy in central London. So his persecution has been going on went on for over 14 years for publishing truthful information about US wars abroad in Iraq, Afghanistan, but also a vast trove of diplomatic cables, all original source material from within the US government that was leaked to him. So I think for Julian, it's very positive that he can be free again, can have a semi-normal life, do normal things that we take for granted.
Yeah.
He's now just in the bush, in the Australian wilderness, and connecting with nature, which I think is having a really healing effect on him.
Amazing.
Yeah, after being, after being in jail for that long. So there's that aspect, his freedom, which is absolutely incredible for us, for our family. But the trade-off, what Julian had to do to secure his freedom was plead guilty to journalism, to investigative journalism. And he was convicted and was given a sentence. And the sentence was time served, but it's still 5 years in prison for publishing truthful information.
Yeah.
And so now there is a prosecutorial pathway in the United States where a prosecutor and the FBI can investigate journalists and publishers and potentially look at getting a 5-year prison sentence if they publish something that embarrasses them or publishes evidence of a crime or something like that. So there is this precedent that has been set that is very worrying, and you've had figures come out from Human Rights Watch, these big human rights organizations, Committee to Protect Journalists, who have said just that this is concerning for journalists and for publishers.
Even Stella herself said it as he was released. I remember that night where everyone was watching him being released. She spoke out after, I think, the lawyer, and said, guys, this is not over. Like, this is still dangerous and we need to ask for pardon. Mm-hmm. That needs to be the next frontier.
Yes.
Of the battle.
Yes, so that's what we're doing now, is advocating for a pardon for Julian with the Trump administration.
And she said, because it's for all of you. It's not about Julian. It's about freedom of speech and freedom of journalism.
Yeah, we'll give Julian some more freedom to work into the future.
For sure.
But it's about unwinding this horrible precedent.
Yep.
And making sure that everybody who pursued Julian knows that if you do this, we're just going to undo it all. So don't waste your time.
Exactly.
Yeah, trying to go after people who publish your information about your crimes. And I think with the Trump administration, I think we're seeing a lot of these figures who were involved in Julian's persecution over the years. People like Mike Pompeo, who had in the lead up during the Trump campaign, Trump came out and said, "Well, I'm not going to give him a position," because he wanted to be Secretary of Defense. And, it was very clear at that point that there is a shift within the Trump administration away from that first term that he had, because the prosecution actually originated under President Trump.
Right.
Jeff Sessions, as Attorney General, was the one who pushed forward with the indictment against Julian. And Mike Pompeo in 2017, essentially, he declared war on Julian in his first speech as CIA director. Came out and said, "I'm going to go after Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, and we're going to make it our number one priority to destroy them." And that's when things got really bad for Julian, and eventually ended up with his time in prison.
Yeah.
But now people like Mike Pompeo have just had his security detail withdrawn from him by President Trump. So
isn't that unreal? That's happening.
Yeah. Well, and so it's these people who pursued Julian are now on the sort of political garbage heap.
Yeah.
In a sense. So I think that's very encouraging for for Julian and for the potential for a pardon for Julian, that these characters are no longer in that circle, and then they've been replaced by people like Tulsi Gabbard, who was an amazing advocate for Julian when she was in the Congress.
And RFK Jr., which I know was also speaking in favor of Julian.
Yeah, so these voices, around President Trump now outweigh the, I guess, old deep state, influence that was there in the previous administration. So we're hopeful that, I guess Trump could choose a moment where he needs a distraction.
And he pulled that card.
Yeah, pull out a pardon for Julian, and everyone will look another way. Or what?
Go, Trump, great, Trump again. Yeah, he may do that. It's a political move for him, and everyone will benefit from it.
You're the Voice is brought to you by Trezor, the original Bitcoin hardware wallet company pioneering the development of self-custody for crypto assets since 2013, empowering individuals with an open source device, enabling beginners and experts to easily and securely hold their coins. I find my Trezor super easy to use and recommend it to my friends and family. Enjoy my 5% discount on Trezor products by clicking the link in the show notes and using the code AFLAT. Are you coming to BTC Prague? The biggest, most influential Bitcoin-only event in Europe returns on June 19 to 21, with 200-plus speakers on 4 stages, 100 Bitcoin companies presenting at the expo, and 10,000 like-minded Bitcoiners and freedom lovers from all around the world. There's a great emphasis this year on the freedom movement, so if you're a freedom maxi like me, you don't want to miss this event. I'm excited to attend once again as a speaker and to interview the best and brightest for my podcast. In fact, BTC Prague is where I conducted my epic interview with Michael Saylor. The event runs for 3 days with a developers day, pitching contest, panels, presentations, and parties. Ticket prices increase on the 1st of each month, so make sure to get your ticket now. Use my code AFLAT for a 10% discount, and see you in Prague.
What do you make of the USAID dismantling that we're seeing these days?
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, I think it's incredible. For a long time, we've known that it is an arm of the CIA, essentially, that they're working hand in glove in their information campaigns. And yeah, it's incredible that that was all exposed. They've been exposed. And I mean, some of the stuff coming out about how they were just trying to ship billions of dollars out in the final days. It's incredible. Mm-hmm. It's incredible to, sending billions of dollars to NGOs who don't even have a plan because they just wanted to ship the money out. It's absolutely incredible. But I think, you can trace, for a long time, there were these laws in the United States where the CIA's influence campaigns couldn't be pushed back onto the United States. So their influence campaigns would take place overseas.
Yes.
But they would not. There was laws preventing that coming back into the United States. So I think what's happened is there's been an overreach where these influence campaigns have been started to come back and influence domestic politics, and that's why the administration has gone so hard on winding it down, because they've seen that influence, that taxpayer money goes out to influence politics back in the United States.
Yeah, we also trace back, sorry that I'm bringing it back to my angle every time, but this is relevant. We saw that some of that money went also to Israeli NGOs in order to try and destabilize the administration in Israel as well. So left-wing, democratic money is coming into the left-wing side of Israel, the movement to try and bring Benjamin Netanyahu out. Don't get me wrong, I don't like Netanyahu at all, and I'm happy for him to be out, but definitely that kind of intervention in the local politics.
Yeah, so foreign influence campaigns all around the world. And I think what I find, I shouldn't say amusing, but I find it interesting is that a lot of these organizations are coming out and saying, this defunding of journalism around the world. You're defunding independent journalists. And you're like scratching your head. Hang on, are you an independent journalist if you're funded by the US government?
Exactly. Yeah. And it doesn't matter how many links you have till you get to the government in the end. The fact is that money arrived from the government to begin with. So yeah, no one is trailing the money. They don't care. They're like, oh, I got some donation from so-and-so in the US, the Jewish organization. But where did they get the money? And where did they get the money? Like, you don't care really where that money is coming from and how it's colored. And so I think that's like people, and that's a question of integrity, because so many people have just lost integrity completely. And as we know, speaking here at a Bitcoin conference and talking about the corruption of the fiat monetary system, that is part of the corruption, where fiat is just dictating such a life where people don't care anymore where their funding is coming from. And everything is like kosher, right? We can use any type of money as long as it serves our ideology or purpose.
Yeah, and the fiat money system enables all of this.
Exactly.
They wouldn't be able to fund it if they couldn't print their own money.
Exactly.
So they just print their own money and they distribute it around the world and to do these influence campaigns. So it is I think, they go together, hand in hand.
Yeah. What about your own journey into this space, into Bitcoin? How did that happen? Through WikiLeaks as well?
Well, when I joined the campaign to free Julian in 2019, we were trying to really build constituencies for Julian, build constituencies of support for Julian.
Yes.
And the Bitcoin community was one that had a deep connection to Julian and WikiLeaks.
Yeah.
And so I started advocating with them, going to conferences, speaking at conferences, telling Julian's story to people, encouraging people to, donate to the campaign as well as take action. And
what did you find about this community?
Yeah, look, they're very powerful. It's a very powerful community, and I'd go to these conferences and talk at conferences, but also when we're advocating at the top levels of government, like we did as well, we'd always come across Bitcoiners. People, they weren't necessarily loud and proud, but they would be there
behind the scenes.
They would be there behind the scenes, and they would be supportive of what we were doing to free Julian. So they were very encouraging, but also a very powerful community. A lot of them, I think sometimes we had challenges. I think there was a period, not so much now, when Bitcoiners thought that using Bitcoin was all they had to do to check out. And I've done my effort. I'm using Bitcoin, and that's my revolutionary act, and it ends there. And what I think now, and I've seen now, and I spoke a little bit about today, was this sort of coming of age of Bitcoiners. Yes. They've realized their political power and the influence that they can have in the political landscape to achieve their goals. It's not influence for influence sake. It's influence to achieve the underlying ideology and goals of what Bitcoin means as freedom of speech money, as deconstructing that fiat system, the decentralizing money for everyone. That there needs to be a political element to achieve that.
Now that's an interesting point, because you know how Bitcoiners come from, at least the ethos is coming from a place where you want to separate money and state, and you don't want to take part so much in the political sphere because you don't believe that that's a solution to our problems today, and the solutions lie in other decentralized systems. And so the tides are turning these days, and as you said, you actually see the results of the political influence that the Bitcoin community can have in some place around the world. And then you start asking yourself, okay, so should I not leverage that power? Should I not make use of it? But there's like this dissonance between the ethos and what's happening now. And so I totally understand Bitcoiners who are, on the one hand, hopeful and want politics to help their higher cause. And on the other hand, I also understand the other ones who say, you know, fuck governments, fuck politicians. They're not the ones that are going to bring the answer, and want to stay away from this. But in the end of the day, what's happening is inevitable. And as we know, you cannot stop Bitcoin. You cannot not let someone participate in the game. Anyone can take part. So it's happening whether we like it or not. So where do you stand there in that scale, right? In that spectrum of views?
I think in between, when one leg in each camp.
Yeah.
You got to go back to the technology, though, right? Like that's the basis. You know, if the technology is bad, then there's not the political possibility doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
And so that underlying the Bitcoin technology is the most important thing, and then that is a stepping stone into the political arena. And I think there's that feedback loop that it's not just political influence, but actually Bitcoin is affecting the state and changing the state and changing the nature of the state. And I think that's what all Bitcoiners
wanted, right?
What all Bitcoiners want. And so it's just building that bridge to be able to make that eventual outcome happen, because the state always, there's always going to be police, and the state will always have the monopoly on violence. But Bitcoin can have, I think, a positive effect on the nature of states and particularly the nature of money.
And it's a transitory phase, I think, now, what we're going through now. So it's going to be super interesting to see what unfolds in the next few years with that. Okay, and I know we don't have a lot of time because you have to run to the airport soon. So I want to ask you about what inspires you and why? I mean, I asked you just as we were walking in what kind of projects you're working on with the movies. I don't know if that's part of your inspiration and what drives you.
Yeah. Well, I guess, we were sort of on this life's journey, right? Like, and the work that we do, you always want to make a difference, and you want to have an impact with the work that you do. And I think that I find that that's what I always aim to do, is to make some sort of difference, have some sort of impact, and particularly around media freedom, press freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of information. I think those areas are what I think are incredibly important to our societies. The ability for us to educate ourselves, to have access to any and all information that's out there. I think that's for us to be able to make better decisions and better ourselves and better our societies. I think that's really important. So a lot of my work now with filmmaking is focused on those areas as well. So a lot about media, a lot about journalism, activism as well, and what inspires people to take action. I find that really interesting.
That is super interesting
as well.
Yeah, I've been in the streets for like 2 or 3 years, and I found it fascinating to see what's happening to me when I decided to finally go out and be consistent in going out and yelling at people with a megaphone, So it's really interesting to understand the psyche behind that. And so this is super cool. And you were talking about you being a freedom maximalist, like in terms of freedom of speech, when you were just talking now on stage. You have that view of let just speech be there and be said and be expressed, and don't try to silence it because that's unnatural. And I prefer to have that, and then to have debate or speech over that, like good debate between people, rather than trying to silence things. I'm on your side, but that is I mean, today it's considered a pretty radical view. I mean, it may have been like that for centuries already, where we were always censored and propagandized in order to be in that safe zone. But I agree with you, and as much as it's hard because there is a lot of speech that is now being labeled as illegal or harmful and all that stuff, I much prefer to let people speak, because if you don't, you are you're shooting yourself in the foot. You are limiting your own freedom. Before you know it, it comes to a subject or a topic that you care about, and you can't speak about that either. So
yeah, and you're depriving. I think we deprive ourselves of our humanity. Free speech is not something that is given to us by a government. It's something that we all have,
right?
That we are all born with as human beings.
Yes,
we can say what we want. We can think what we want. It is part of our humanity. And when we start to say, well, you can't say this or you can't say that, you're actually depriving each other of our humanity and depriving ourselves of the opportunity to change someone's mind. If we don't know what they're really thinking, if we can't actually unearth some of these ideas, how can we
evolve?
How can we evolve or go after them or say that these ideas are actually bad if we don't know that they exist? So I think countering with more speech, not less,
exactly,
is the right way to go. I think the American, I really like the American idea where, these are natural rights that we are born with. They're not given to us by a state or anything like that. They're our natural rights that we're born with, and they're not given to us by a piece of paper or anything like that. They're just part of our humanity.
Mm-hmm. That's why I call this podcast "You're the Voice," because I want to remind people they have a voice and that it matters. Because we just forget. And that's why I decided that I do what I do, because I want to inspire people to do that.
And then free speech, I think, if you're on the moon and you have free speech, it doesn't really matter. So that's one aspect, but freedom to communicate, I think, is even more important.
Right. And not being censored and deplatformed from an internet-based culture where we live in today. And you were mentioning Nostr as one of those protocols that we can use to not be censored with our content and our speech. And I'm there too. And yes, it is mostly early adopters right now because we are early. But that is, I think, the future of communications and communication protocols and speech. If you have a protocol where you can essentially say what you want and you're not, technically you can't be deplatformed or silenced, and you own your identity there and no one else can switch off your account because you own the account. That is one massive power.
Yeah. And I think that's the future of these social media platforms or protocols, is things like Nostr, things like Bitcoin, that cannot be stopped, that cannot be switched off. Once they will attract these developers, I think they'll attract the brightest minds, because there is no, feudal overlord who is going to introduce some unfair tax on you or kick you off your land. It will attract these people who know that there are no regulations, that they can put all their energy into it and keep the result of that energy.
Yeah.
So I think, very exciting about Nostr and these protocol-based solutions. And we'll see where they go. And for journalists, they should be totally, they should be attractive for journalists.
Is Julian going to be on there?
He's like watching.
Is he?
Yeah.
Is he sniffing around?
Yeah, he's watching. He loves Nostr.
Nice.
Yeah. So
good. Does he like the idea?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he's very interested.
Cool.
Very interested in it.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm sure the moment he joins, he's going to be zapped. People are going to swamp him with the Satoshis. That would be so cool to see. That would be amazing. Like everyone will be so stoked to see him there. Are you there? We're gonna have your NPub in the show notes.
Yeah, I'm on there too.
And I remember just as a last thing before we finish, I remember you telling the little story about you going with Julian to walk around in the forest. You said that in El Salvador, and you saw these fences or gates with the
we were actually driving. Yeah,
you were driving.
Yeah,
can you tell that one?
Oh yeah, so driving around.
Great story.
Julian's incredibly popular in Australia. There's 90% of Australians wanted him. We did polling during the campaign. It was 90% of Australians wanted him brought home, and so there were signs of support, lots of graffiti everywhere, free Julian Assange, and there was a sign outside a house that we drove past that said free Julian Assange. Someone had kept their sign up. And Julian stopped and went inside, and it was an older couple and said thank you to them. Yeah, and actually knew my dad as well. So they rang my dad.
Were they like surprised to see him?
Yeah, they were blown away. Yeah, they were blown away. So that was really nice. And they rang my dad and you never guess who came. So
cool.
It's very cool. And
he was moved by
he's so appreciative of what everyone's done for him. And from those small actions, right up to the Pope and presidents. So much.
Did it give him strength as he was there?
Yeah,
seeing
that the people fighting for you on the outside. Yeah.
It really does give you strength.
That just gives him a lot of strength to keep going. Yeah.
Wow. And is he okay physically?
Yeah, he's getting much better. He's getting much better.
Great.
In the last 6 months, I think I've seen like a huge improvement in his health since he's been out of prison. He's really enjoying his life as well.
So good to hear.
Yeah, been with his kids and Stella, and been able to show the kids all the things that he grew up with, in the Australian outback.
Amazing for them to have Dad back as well. That was so moving.
Yeah, it's good.
Gabriel, a message of hope from you to people?
Well, to Bitcoiners and people in general, I think, look at what's been achieved. Ross Ulbricht's free, Julian's free. It can be done. And keep fighting for what we believe in.
Yeah.
I think these key people who came under attack, there's still more people who are suffering under these attacks, these regulatory attacks and attacks on their freedom, and that we need to keep going, keep defending them, because it never stops.
No, it's ongoing. I hope to live until I'm very, very old to see what's happening in the world. But we definitely live in very interesting times. Gabriel, thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I loved it.
Yeah, good.
Thanks.
Thanks for being with us. Please take a minute to give this episode a like, a comment, and subscribe or follow. And please share it with your friends so they can also get value and choose to take some positive action in their lives. Till next time.